Hi. Today's video is about using variables of the bool data type in order to alter code behavior. And once you realize you can do this, you'll find a million different places to use it in. But the two case scenario I'm using for the actual example code is case 1, we want to delete all instances of a name in a file. And case 2 is we want to delete just the first instance of the name in the file. And this may seem like kind of an artificial, situation, but in fact this solves a real problem I had in a much bigger piece of code. As you know, I like to create small test programs in order to create working code before I reinsert them in the big code, so I know I've got thoroughly debugged code. And with our two case scenario, we're essentially using the same algorithm for both cases. But in the second case, we want the code to work slightly differently, and that we want it to be aware that we've already deleted one example, or one name of the type we said. So whenever you have a situation where there's two possible conditions, either you want to know that you've deleted a name, or you don't care whether you've deleted a name, the bool is perfect. The bool is a two-state variable. It can either be true or false. So we can set it to true if we have deleted a name, and false if we haven't deleted a name, or some other variation of this. It'll probably make it a lot simpler if I just show you the working code, or the program as it's running. Basically, this is a list of names, some of which are duplicated. And it's important to note that this isn't just a list of names in the list box. This is actually a list of names in a file, where we're maintaining the names in the file, and we want to change the file based on running the program. So if we look at the name Tom, we have Tom twice here, and then a third time here. And then I have two buttons. One says delete all instances of the name, and the second one says delete just one instance of the name, needless to say the first instance. So if I select Tom as the name we want to deal with and say delete all instances, you notice the second list box now shows what's in the file. And as you can see, the first two Toms are gone, and then the third Tom that was under Jason here is also gone. So all instances are deleted. And in order not to confuse myself, I ended up creating a third button called refresh, which just acts as though we opened the program and shows what the contents of the file is currently without showing the changes. So the next instance is we have almost identical situation. We have three examples of the name Doug. We have Doug at the top, and then a third Doug once again under Jason. And if I select Doug, but this time if I say delete one instance, you'll see in the file of the first two Dougs only one remains, and the third Doug is still there, so it just deleted the first Doug it found. So if we look at how this actually works, we can double click on the delete all instances button, and I'll go to the event handler for delete all. And this basically gets the name from the list box using the list box name dot selected item dot to string and putting it in a local variable. And then it calls a function called delete all instances of names with the name we just got from the list box. So if I put the cursor on this function and right click and say go to definition, we'll go to this function and we'll see how that works. And essentially it creates an array list, and then it opens the file with a stream reader. The names file is a constant string. That's the name of the file. And then we read in the first name, and then we go into a while loop where we say if the input is not equal to the name we got passed as a parameter, add the name to the array list. And the other implication of this is if the input is equal to the name we got passed as a parameter, we don't do this statement, which means we don't add it to the array list. So the array list is going to get filled with all the names that aren't the name that we got passed. And then when it finishes the loop, it closes the file, and then it opens the same file name with a create text, which the create text basically overwrites anything that was in the file previously, and we use the same name we used before. So we're basically zeroing out that file, and then we're going through a loop that goes from 0 to less than the count of the array list. So in other words, if there's 10 items in the array list, it'll go from 0 to 9, or all the items in the array list, and we increment the pointer, of course, as we go through. And then we use this variable to the StreamWriter variable to write the member of the array list to the file. So we're writing out all the names that aren't the name we got passed to this newly created file of the same name as the previous file. And then we close the overwrite, and we clear the array list. Actually, clearing the array list probably isn't necessary, because I think it'll get cleared when we exit the function and the array list just gets destroyed. But just to be on the safe side, we do that. If we go into the event handler for the other button, which is the delete just the first instance of the name, the code is pretty much identical. We get the name from the list box, but this time we call a different function. We call delete first instance in names, passing it the name. And if we put the cursor on this and then select go to definition and look at this function, the main difference is we now have a Boolean variable called instance deleted, which we initially set to false. So this is saying it's a flag that the instance has been deleted. That's what the F stands for, is flag in Hungarian notation. And it's saying, no, we haven't deleted anything yet. In fact, we haven't done anything yet. And then once again, we open the file and with using a StreamReader variable, and we read in the first line, and we go through the code in a while loop the same way. But in this case, when we say if the input is not equal to the name, or we haven't deleted an instance, then add it to the array list. And there's now an else clause. It says if these conditions aren't true, set this Boolean variable to true, which basically means the first time that the input is not equal to the name, or the first time the input is equal to the name, because it's an else, it's going to hit this else and set this variable equal to true. Since this is false, so neither one of these conditions is true, so we'll hit the else and set this to true. And from now on, this compound statement is going to always be true, because even if the variable is equal to the one we were passed, so this is false, this will be true. So no matter what, we're going to add variables to the array list every time we find a name in the list. So we only skip adding the name the first variable we find, and that's entirely because we're using a Boolean to avoid that. And then once again we overwrite the list with the code and so on. As I say, once you're aware of Booleans, you'll probably find more and more times that you'll want to use a flag to slightly control the change of the flow of the code. You know, to slightly change the way it operates based on conditions having occurred. In fact, you could create something along the lines of a finite state automaton, although in a lot of ways a finite state automaton is an alternative to a Boolean. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.